Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Alex, reading book 3 from Allbyon to Britannia, The Last Wizard. Although, as we know, he's not the last wizard because Miles, it turns out, is now his apprentice. They've met some other witches. He started examining the family trees of all these people. And at the end of the last chapter, he discovered that some people that Ada had had visions of were her ancestors, and they're buried in Daubney Park Cemetery. And I said, at the end of the last thing, I wonder if I'll have to go back to Daubney Park Cemetery, and now here we are on chapter 16, which is called Daubney Park Cemetery. So, make yourself comfy, may sip for my tea occasionally. Let's begin. Exams and revision took up all my time until the beginning of July. I'd even had to miss what Rose called my Saturday Wizard School for a month, so that there was no chance to explore the north section of Daubney Park Cemetery. When Leah and Ruth and I had finished with exams, Mum and Dad invited everyone round on a Friday evening for a fish and chip supper from our local chip shop. Marco came with Sebastian because he had something to tell us about what had happened to the nasty mob. I was having a drink in the Green Man, my mate's pub, around the back of the cemetery. He remembered us looking through his CCTV and remembered Vlad Black's face, once seen, never forgotten. He told me he's seen him a couple of times since, once in the local supermarket. I suppose even the Blacks eat, but once near the cemetery gates. If you remember, we told him we thought they were mixed up in some drug dealing, so he kept an eye on where they went. They went into the cemetery, and there were all sorts of goings on in there. It dawned on me that they picked the cemetery to kidnap SJ in the first place because they already knew about the gap in the fence around the back and where to park. Do you think it is drugs? Sebastian asked. I've not heard of them, and I know the name of most of the local dealers. I think it's more likely they do some of their black magic nonsense in the cemetery. It'd be their sort of place, Marco replied. So Ada and his daughter Tuckwell are buried in the same cemetery where SJ was kidnapped and where the Blacks still hang out, I said. Yes, said Marco. Mum and Dad looked at me. They knew how much I wanted to go there and find the Tuckwells too. Sebastian looked at me too. Dad said, "If you go over there, please be careful." It was a Saturday, halfway through July, when Sebastian and I went on our field trip to Daubney Park Cemetery with Marco, Ruth and Leah. It was an odd idea for a day out. We decided not to bring the magical objects, which were at Rose's cottage, as the place with most protection. For the last couple of years, the Daubney Park Society had a little booth for information just inside the gates, which was open at the weekends. We told the lady in the booth that what we were looking for, and gave her the reference. She sold us a map of the cemetery. The north section, where the vault was located, was now a wildlife area, which meant that they had given up trying to control the weeds and trees. We were supposed to keep to the remaining paths, and so we were hoping that the vault would be somewhere near one of them so that we could get to it. It was quite an exciting afternoon. After several attempts, we found the path that the map indicated should lead to the turn-off towards the Tuckwell vault. Luckily, that was one of the paths that wildlife enthusiasts were encouraged to follow. However, many of the side paths in the area we were exploring had disappeared almost entirely, given over to a copse of sycamore trees. By a process of elimination, we eventually decided that the side path to the vault we were looking for was behind a large blackberry bush, from which rose a tall sycamore tree. There was a ruined vault by the bush, with a collapsed roof. The lady in the little booth had told us that there were no coffins remaining above ground in any of the vaults that had fallen into ruin. After trying to find another way, it was clear that the only way to get up the path was to climb over the ruined vault and hopefully climb down onto the remains of the path beyond. It was also clear that as I was still the smallest, I was going to be the one to attempt it. When he saw the look on my face, Sebastian said, "This is part of your task, Miles, like Britannia said. If you look as if you're slipping, I'll cast a levitation spell." He grinned. I could have asked why he couldn't just levitate us all around the bush, but I realised that all he would say was it was part of my task. Despite what the lady had said, I was terrified that I would fall through the roof and land on a skeleton. I was glad that Mum wasn't there. The walls of the vault were a couple of metres tall. They were covered with Victorian decorative bits and pieces, so that it was quite easy to climb. Marco and Leah were lookouts in case anyone else came up the path and wondered why a teenage boy was climbing up a vault. The roof itself was mainly missing, so I clambered gingerly around the edge. When I reached the other side, I looked down. There was a branch of the sycamore tree that I thought I could climb onto, which would take me over the blackberry bush. I reached out to it, overbalanced, and ended up hanging from the branch. I launched myself forward and managed to land just beyond the brambles. I was winded and had to pause to get my breath back. Ahead there were vaults on either side of what had been the path, which was covered with grass and weeds, but passable. One of the vaults still had the little metal sign with a location number on it, so I worked out where I was in relation to where the map said the Tuckwell's vault should be. It should be 5 vaults further on. I squeezed past another sycamore tree, and there it was. It looked like a tiny church made of red shiny tiles and a roof of green slate. There was a rusty cast iron gateway with a big lock. Over the top there was a plaque that said, "The Tuckwell Family Vault." I peered through the gate, making a ball of light as the whole area was quite dark with overhanging trees. Inside there were no shelves or coffins, but steps down into the earth. I could just make out a door at the bottom. If I was supposed to return the magical objects, I would need to go down into the vault under the earth and put the objects there. Was the lead-lined box still there? Should I put the objects in another box? How would I get there with any kind of box? I was not even sure if I could get back to the others without the aid of magic. Before I set off, I took a photo with my camera to send to Meredith Tuckwell in the USA. I was not at all surprised that he had been unable to find it himself. I looked in the other direction, up the overgrown path, wondering if I could get out that way. I could see the path by the line of the vaults. I phoned the others to tell them I'd arrived okay and was looking for another way out. There were a couple of trees in my way that I could push past, some patches of nettles to avoid. I set off. I had the map. This path should meet another one parallel to the one we had come along together. I found it, but there were so many trees in the way that I could see that even someone my size could not get along it. I looked around and realised there was a path crossing a couple of graves away. It was not one of the official paths. It wound between graves and vaults in both directions. As I was trying to get back to the others, I turned right. It wound along until I was thoroughly lost, and then I reached something that brought me up short. There was a big, flat family grave that had been covered with white marble tiles, surrounded by a low wall. Every foot or so along the wall there was a black candle, half burnt away, with wax dribbles down onto the tiles. On the tiles had been painted a circle around a 6-pointed star. I may be only an apprentice wizard, but I could feel dark thoughts and twisted desires. I could even identify whose thoughts they were, the nasty mob. As if in response to the thought, some fairies appeared. The nasty mob have been here a while. Come at night and say nasty things, do nasty things. Poor dead people, having such nasty, spoiling their nice grave. I need to get back to my friends and tell them about this. I don't suppose you know how I can get back to them. I'm a bit lost. The fairies chuckled. Now you've seen it, big wizard will make them go away, yes? Follow me, they said. I arrived back at the place where the others were waiting for me, from a totally different direction, and with twigs and leaves in my hair. I'd done quite a lot of crawling to follow the fairies, but at least I was back. I told them all the details of the Tuckwell vault, and then about the grave, with the help of the fairies. I got the distinct feeling that Sebastian had a much clearer idea of what the nasty mob were up to on that grave than I did, and that he was going to tell me. I had a feeling that I did not want to know. The fairies were thrilled that we were taking an interest, but I don't think any of us knew what to do. We went to Sebastian's flat for tea. Sebastian seemed to be leaving it to me to work out what to do next. We'd found the Tuckwell vault. I'd remembered to take a photo to send to Meredith Tuckwell in the USA. The fairies had told us to take the magical objects to the vault and they would tell us what to do. But should we do something about the nasties first? If you don't mind me saying, I think this is about the fairies, said Leia. They're the ones who told us what to do with the magical objects, and now they want us to do something about the nasties. Perhaps we should talk to them, said Ruth. They might be able to help us. They helped get Leia and her granny away from Temple House. They talk in a really silly way, but they aren't silly, and they have some link to Britannia, who told the Tuckwells about collecting the objects, and the fairies told us to take the objects home. Miles, what are we to do next? Sebastian said to me. This is your task. The decision is yours. I was thinking about unlocking that rusty gate to the vault and going down those steps, then unlocking the door. I did not want to do it, but what I said was, I think the first thing we should do is what we've been asked to do. I should take the magical objects to the vault. I'm not exactly looking forward to it, but I'll do it. 2 things happened that week to make me sure that I had made the right decision. The first came from the piles of papers from Temple House that Sebastian was still working his way through. Before the builders came, he piled them into Marco's van and took them to his flat. What he found he showed me when we met the following Saturday for Wizards School. There was a very old file box labelled Grandma. Inside were various letters and papers belonging to Adelaide Templewick, Rupert's grandmother. I think Rupert must have piled them in there after she died. I'm more thorough than Rupert. I went through everything: letters, postcards, recipes, knitting patterns. Among them was an unopened letter addressed to Mrs. Adelaide Templewick. I recognised the handwriting. It was from her son, St. John. He showed me the envelope. When I opened it, there was a letter and another envelope. He showed me a handwritten note. My dear mother, when Rupert comes of age, please give him the enclosed letter. It is very important to me. I will not explain why I have left him, but I hope it will show him that I do love him. Your loving but heartbroken son, St. John. He must have given it to her when he left. Perhaps she was so upset when he left that she just put it away unopened, and it remained unopened. If Rupert noticed it when he put all this stuff in the box, he did not recognise his father's handwriting. That's very sad, I said. I suppose it is, but it's also very fortunate. Read it. He handed it over to me. St. John Tuckwell's letter. My dear son Rupert, I have spent my life searching for true magic, and finally something has happened to show me that I was right to believe in it. It is so sad that this has happened to me when I am so near the end of my tether. Will you remember what happened in the garden last night? I took you out there. Oh, how much do I miss your mother. It is not your fault that she is gone. Over the years of our marriage she has grown weaker and weaker, and now she is gone. I don't think I can care for you. I don't have the strength, but I'm going to do what I can, what the fairies told me to do. I have 4 magical objects. Your mother and I collected so many things, but the fairies told me which ones were magic. They told me that they could keep you safe if I hid them away around the house. I'm going to do that today. The fairies told me not to tell you what they were or where I've hidden them, but I needed to tell you that I'd done something for you so that you don't think of me as entirely useless. All I want you to know is that I've done this for you. It might be the only thing I can do for you. I do love you, Rupert, but I can't care for you in any other way than this. Your loving father, St. John. If Vlad and Hecate found this letter, I began, they would have torn the house apart to find the objects, and they would know about the fairies even if they did not see them. Could they have done anything with the objects? I asked. Probably not. They'd have sold the silver egg cup and the gold medal. We would never have found them, and they are important to your development as a wizard and to British magic. So no pressure. We both laughed. The second thing to encourage me I heard about the next morning. Leia and her gran were still staying with Rose, and for some reason they had taken the 4 magical objects out into the garden. Immediately they were surrounded by fairies. The little wizard needs to take them to Ada and Isidore now that you know where they lie. What about the nasty mob and the cemetery? They need sorting out, but do this first. It all seemed clear now. I made the decision. If I was going to do this thing, I needed to do it as soon as possible. And you can find out about Miles going down into the tomb, I'm sure, in our next story time. See you then.